I think there comes a point in a person's life when we tend to embrace mediocrity, you know. It's fascinating because I think every single person comes to that point and to that decision making step where the question is, do I be mediocre and happy? Do I be mediocre and accept my circumstances? Do I be mediocre and not aim for more and more and more? Whether that's money or whatever, right? Materialistic things. Or, do I accept mediocrity? And what that entails is I have a job every day. I work 5 days a week, get my pay 6 days a week, sometimes if I'm oppressed 7 days a week. I believe it's the same kind of dilemma that comes to a person that usually become the travel type, the guy who wants to travel everywhere and make vlogs and, all those kind of things. And I think it's interesting because the question is, what do we consider as mediocrity, right? And I think this is a very fascinating question because, in previous generations, a woman is basically someone who gives birth, takes care of the home, raises a child, and the child, and the only thing she gets back is love and appreciation. And I guess for a lot of people that's mediocre. But I tell you, every person comes to this stage in their life where they have to choose whether they have a so-called mediocre life, where they will get the opportunity to be loved and appreciated, at least by their children. We don't know about their husband and who they are and whatever. Or we choose the better life. And I think this question only haunts a few people. It liberates a few people. It bounds a few people. And it is accepted by a few people. If we take the average person, let's be absolutely frank here, the average person accepts that they work, they earn a living, they take care of their family, and that's basically it. So hopefully they earn enough that their wife does not have to work. And let's be honest here, a lot of women, especially after childbirth, I don't know what happens, I just don't know, but a lot of women don't really pursue things outside too much. Of course, there are always exceptions. There are always the women who are, ambitious and who chase stuff and things outside of their family. See, I get it. All that is true. But if you look at the majority of women, after childbirth, a lot of things change. And I always find that fascinating. Of course, a lot of multinational organizations today are trying to make sure that women that, go through childbirth and they come back don't really quit their jobs, because if you look at the attrition rate after childbirth, after the first childbirth, is, I think, very high. After the second childbirth, the women that stay back in the workplace is very less, very, very less. I think it takes a special kind of woman to, have that kind of mindset. And I say special kind of woman because the average woman is not that kind of person. People tend to make their life plans around the possibility of having a family, children, and they already decide whether or not they're going to stay in the workforce and how long they're going to stay in the workforce for. Their hope is that their husbands will carry them, after that. And this is the average person, if you look at the whole world, right? Now, it's not like the wife is just going to sit there and do nothing. Taking care of the child is not an easy thing. Taking care of the home is not an easy thing. if you're at home, most of the time you've got housework and, all of that thing takes time. If you're fortunate enough, you can have someone who can help you with that. Somebody you hire and they help you with the cleaning and the washing the dishes and everything. Or if you're even more fortunate, you buy devices like the dishwashers and everything to do that kind of work. But that's still not the majority of women, right? But of course, there are certain cultures where women are not doing labor-intensive tasks. And so things like cooking, being a chef in a restaurant. Of course, not a chef that is like running around everywhere, but a lot of women, especially in Southeast Asian countries, they sell vegetables in the market. So those jobs don't require you stand and run around. You can sit. And of course, in the morning times when you're stocking up, when you're making phone calls, that time it's frantic. Afterwards, when it settles down and you're selling, most of the time you're sitting. So many of these women, again, some of them, they sit in their benches and then they make fried dishes or baked dishes or whatever. So you see these kind of women as well. And so maybe there are a lot of cultural differences that I'm just glossing over. But in general, most women, after childbirth, I think a lot of women's mindset changes completely. Especially if the home is stable, I think the mindset of the woman really changes. And obviously, I don't know what it is. But I find that fascinating because the question then is that mediocrity? Is that settling for less? Is the only reward for your life is love, appreciation, and family? Is that the only reward? Is that a just reward? Is that a fair reward? Is that an acceptable reward? Is that a reward which trumps every other reward? And of course, the reward of eternal life, that's the number one. Relationship with God, that is ultimate. But for your life on earth, is that the ultimate? Is it the ultimate that you have a stable family and either your husband earns actively or passively? So that's the other thing, right? A lot of people are looking for passive income. The question is passive income really a mediocre lifestyle? Because you notice that a lot of these people, they have worked for 10 years of their life, 15 years of their life. They built up foundations for their passive income or whatever. Now they're just chilling, right? I do find that fascinating. But I believe every person comes to this point in their life where they have to make the decision of whether they're going to be mediocre or not. Now, a lot of people think not being mediocre basically means you travel around the world, see the world, experience cultures. I personally, I'm not saying anything specifically, but I do not think that is going beyond mediocrity. I'm not saying that that's not a difficult thing to build an audience, and if you're a vlogger or a blogger, to build an audience, it's not easy. The only good thing, the most important thing, I think it's wrong to say only good thing, is that you're your own boss. You can do whatever you want within the bounds of what you offer to the people who are paying subscription or watch time or whatever. And I think that's interesting, right? A lot of people... But I do think that kind of life is fascinating because you get to travel to all these different places. And you know what? If you can find a partner with you, someone you marry to, who's of the same ilk as you are, and there is a desire to pursue these kind of travel pursuits with you, I think that's great, And I think that is when I feel like there's a justification for these things. It's kind of like that's actually when I start to realize people are going to these professions because they think it's safe, right? So back in the day when there was only television and all of these things, you could only make money if you made a travel vlog and you sent it to Fox Life or TLC or all the other things, National Geography, Discovery. That's the only way you can actually make some money, if you have a production house behind you. Today you can be your own production house. Of course, it helps to have help, and a lot of people do have help. But I think it's interesting. But today, it feels like the profession of travel vlogging, it's difficult to break into because obviously, it's already a market that's been carved up. But it seems like at some point, people are kind of getting used to the idea that, this is a possible profession, right? I've never been a skeptic of travel. Absolutely love travel. In fact, even I would like to travel all these different countries, experience all these different cultures. But, the question is, when we are going to these places, right, we're looking for stimulation in the form of a beautiful scenery, wonderful mountains, great plains, green grasses and tall trees, lush forests and wonderful mist, beautiful animals, nature at its raw and finest, people and cultures that are more, that give us a nostalgia of what could have been had we not advanced as a civilization. Of course, in many parts of the world we have advanced, many we haven't. Right? What is the implication of somebody not having a pot and pan? What is the implication of somebody not having a gas stove, not having electricity? There are still many places and villages all over the world where they still use kerosene lamps, right? I've never seen a kerosene lamp in my life, if I'm being honest with you. It seems my mother, when she was growing up, at night there was not much electricity. So when she was very small, right, at that time they used to have kerosene lamp. And then by the time she went to school and she was halfway through primary school, I think that's when my grandfather got a bulb or something. So there are still places. So for me, I've never seen a kerosene lamp. I've only seen them as vintage type ornaments in restaurants where it's kept there for fun, where there's still a wire going in and lighting up the lamp electrically. That's the only time I've seen a kerosene. But there's still places in the world where kerosene lamps are used with the kerosene as the fuel. And there's a kind of consumerism that comes with going to these places and watching all of these things unfold. And what you realize after a certain point in time is that your eye is capturing pictures. In fact, your eye is not just capturing pictures, it's consuming pictures. See, you're no longer eating through your mouth, you're eating through your eyes. And so it puts your body in this kind of stimulation. Because the question is, are we doing travel for travel's sake? Right? If exploring different cultures is a what to say? It is reasonable goal. See, I'm not sure really if that is a reasonable goal. right? So from my perspective, when I want to travel, I want to stay for a long time. And the reason is there are some places where the air is cleaner. And whenever I have been to places where the air is clean, and I've stayed there for a extended period of time, meaning at least 2-3 weeks, my body just, it's different. It just feels different. It feels like a lot of the bad breath that I've breathed has been exhaled completely. And it's good air that's going into my body, and I feel like it really energizes you, some of these places. And of course, if you go to a cold place with clean environment, you might not be energized. You might want to sleep till 11 o'clock in the morning. And you might not want to take a bath. You would rather wear a cap over your head to hide the stink. Just do a little bit of washing, nothing serious. But then you take bath once every 2 days or 3 days. It's a different lifestyle, right? I think a lot of people are not chasing the lifestyle. They're chasing the stimulation. And they're spending, hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars to get that stimulation. Some people are not spending anything. They're able to vlog it, and then they're able to make money, and then they're able to do these kind of travels. One of the things that I do not like so much about short travel, 3-4 days, 1 week, 2 weeks, is it always feels like a form of escapism within a week and a half. And I do not like that. I don't think we should be escaping from our problems. We should be fighting them head on, and by the grace of God, we overcome all of those challenges. And so for me, the idea of travel was always stimulating from a young age, but the more I see it online, the more it feels like it's probably not healthy, really. Because I see a lot of people, and they look at people who have barely anything and how happy they are. And it doesn't change their life so much. It changes their perspective. They are more, let's say, they're more happy. Nothing wrong with that. But they're still not willing to give in to a lifestyle, an orthodoxy, so to speak, to live a reasonable and decent life. There is a feeling that to rebel against orthodoxy is to escape mediocrity. And I'm not in agreement with that thing, with that kind of thought process. Because I understand that, obviously, you have to sometimes escape the orthodoxy or go over the orthodoxy, but sometimes you just have to fight the orthodoxy. You have to do what is right at the moment and for the future, right? I feel like a lot of people make decisions that don't have a bearing on their future. It has a bearing only on their today. And what I mean by that is a positive influence on their future. Because the more you chase travel-based consumerism, the more you're going to fall into the traps of travel-based consumerism. So the question is, can you stop for a year without travel? Stay in your home country. Do just normal jobs. Just get by for a year. Is it possible for you to live that kind of life? I think that's a serious and sincere question people have to look at. But I actually, like the fact that a lot of people who are not making money through orthodox means, right? So making money on YouTube is still a very outside concept. A lot of people are making money. But if we're being honest, compare the people that are making money on online platforms, not just YouTube, to the general population, there's such a minority, right? So the question is, so they're not mediocre, but what they've done is they've been excellent in something, they've pursued it, they've done a good job at it, they have a natural talent for it. And the reason I say that is because a lot of times you look at the higher YouTube count, people with higher YouTube count, it's usually just their voice. Their voice is soothing and it's just amazing. If you look at a lot of people, their followers are children below the ages of 18, and you hear, and the only thing you know is either they're gaming streamers or they've got such a soothing voice. It's almost childlike, but this mix of adult and child. You're like a young adult, but the person is probably 25, 27. Of course, when you're 30, things change. Your perspective changes, and I don't know why that is, but whatever. And there's this energy and exuberance and this kind of innocence and that childlike voice, yet on an adult body that is extremely attractive to people. Let's look at someone like Larry King, right? Larry King has been on TV all his life. Is it possible that in our generation, or in the generations to come, we will see YouTubers who have spent their whole life on YouTube, creating content, making money, living their life? That'd be amazing, isn't it? That I think is something that is a revolutionary idea in my opinion. Right? I think it's a revolutionary idea. One of the fickle things about being in the entertainment business is you are only a product of your time. Meaning as time passes, the target audience changes, the mindset of the audience changes. So for example, if you've completed engineering 10 years ago, and you're completing engineering 20 years from 10 years ago, which is 10 years from now, see, your target audience will be different because what you study in engineering will be different, or at least should be different, right? I'm not saying it will be, I'm just saying it should be different. And I think when that happens, a shift happens, right? People will respect you for the skills you have, but you have to be a product of your times. So the people that I feel like who are going for excellence in mediocre jobs are usually people who are evolving with time. They're doing 9 to 5, they have a wife and a child. Wife probably is working, probably is not working, we don't know. They may not have a legacy which everybody knows about, but something is fascinating about these kind of people is that we look at them as wheels on a cog, gears, small gear on a huge machine, but they make the system, they make the society, if you know what I mean. The question is mediocrity the essential criteria for success? Right? And I don't say this to praise mediocrity, but to say to you that there is something in being a product of the system and being successful at it. Ethically, of course, when I mean product of the system, successful, I mean ethically, right? I'm not talking about people who did all kinds of shady things to come up to the top. And there are many, many, many cultures and societies where that is the only way to get to the top, fortunately. Now, that doesn't take ruthlessness, that just takes someone without a heart, in my opinion. As much as it's kind of crazy to say that, I still believe that. But do we as a society value mediocrity too much? Also, to be a wheel in the cog, to be a gear in the big machine, do we actually respect that too much? One of the biggest inventions of our time, or the ideological philosophy of our time. The philosophy of our time is investing in productivity, and to invest productively. So investments can be on property, on assets, on businesses. You can have debt-based investment, you can have savings-based investments, and a lot of people say you invest in yourself. What that means, you get a college degree in education, or not a college degree, a diploma, you do an apprenticeship, whatever it is, investing in yourself. And I feel like a lot of times this is where the definition of mediocrity, I believe, gets formalized. So when you have worked for the first 15 to 16 to 18 years of your life, going through school and then doing a college, by 24, let's say you've completed all of your education, you're at a job, and you're learning at your job, right? No disparaging that. Which is why I think engineering jobs are rewarding, because you learn a lot of things every day. Every day might be the same, but every day might be different. Which is what is fascinating about these jobs. But what's interesting is you see a lot of people that have finished the first 24, 25 years of their life, and they're either burnt out or they're getting into a job and basically just plateauing. See, I believe that's what mediocrity is, right? People that refuse to invest on reasonably important things in their life, who are not willing to take the risk to invest on things that they ought not to invest in and yet can give great returns. See, I think mediocrity comes in withholding your money and not putting it on the soil like seed is sown on the ground. And Jesus has got a beautiful parable about this. So you only reap when you sow seed, right? See, I can eat a grain of rice. If I sow it, I can get 100 grains of rice. Yeah? So if you have a handful of rice, you eat half of it, and then you sow half of it. And I think mediocrity really is the refusal to invest in anything. Most people invest on homes, so a lot of people that get into decent paying jobs more or less invest in a home. If they can afford it straight up, they buy it, or they take a loan and then they repay it for, anywhere between 10 years to 30 years. And you see, that's the thing. I think it's interesting, but I also think that's fundamentally interesting. So is that the only investment you are making? Now, until a few years ago, I despised people that did not make hyper investments, extremely risky investments. But I think a lot of people get afraid when they get children, right? The inability to provide food for your children, a roof over their top, the inability to pay for their education, it frightens people. Which is why you can see that the majority of the population is risk averse and is not willing to invest. The question is, the people that do go beyond that, not just as a crazy pursuit of not having children, not having families, There are people who invest even by taking the normal systemic route or route. Those people can be successful. But if you truly want to be successful, you must invest. Sometimes your investments will succeed, sometimes they will fail. But if you are listening to the voice of God, walking according to His leading, I'm pretty sure all of your investments will be successful. A lot of people, when they talk about prosperity, gospel, they fail to realize that not everybody's talking about getting rich overnight. A lot of people are talking about seed time and harvest, which is a very fundamental biblical principle. And you will read that all the time in the Bible, whether that be Abraham, Job, everybody followed this principle. It's seed time and harvest. And if you truly want to go beyond mediocrity, that's what it is, right? See, when we as Christians look at the early church was not really a rich group of people. They did not have rich patrons either. But they had, and they had for each other, right? But one of the most interesting things these people did, especially the disciples and the preachers, the ministers, the apostles and leaders, they invested the word of God in people. The people accepted, and then they became a generation of men and women who believed and trusted in the word of God. And then they became successful. When people say all that he touches turns to gold, as a Christian, I've seen this in mine and my peer Christians, people that believe in Christ. I've seen it in their lives again and again. Now, don't get me wrong, I've seen people outside of the Christian realm also be very successful. But usually, I've seen Christian people that really had their head in the right place, their heart facing towards God, very successful. Right? Now, unfortunately, a lot of them do become mediocre after some time. And I think this is the first time I'm putting a marker, a line on what mediocrity is. Mediocrity is basically a refusal to invest, whether in yourself, in your family, in the real world, in business or whatever, right? It's a refusal to invest. And Jesus has a beautiful parable about that too. The guy with, I think, 5,000 coins, 10,000 coins, and 2,000 coins. 5,000 coins, 2,000 coins, and 1,000 coins. I think that's the parable. Or 5 talents, 2 talents, and 1 talent. I don't know which one exactly. The refusal to invest really does hinder growth. And if you're not growing, then you are mediocre. You're staying where you are. You're plateauing. From plateau, you can only go down, unfortunately. If you're a non-Christian, I can only tell you that your investments can succeed, they can fail. But you got to make those investments. If you're a Christian, I would say, listen to the voice of God. Hear what He has to say and then invest. Don't just blindly invest. That's not going to work. That'll also fail. So the question comes back to my sticking point. Throughout this video, I've been talking a lot about travel vloggers, right? So what are they doing? Right? They've invested time into YouTube. That has gained them an audience. The audience is loyal to them. And so they will earn a living, right? But not everyone is like that. I know there are travel vloggers who haven't gained the trust of their audience yet. And I think the reason is because regular people tend to be attracted to a certain kind of individual. They're like the normal kind. The guy who's willing to flaunt the rules for their sakes. So there are a lot of people who think certain rules in society are just ridiculous, but they don't want to break them. So when they see a travel vlogger break them, they like that. That's how a lot of people, you have to understand, their idea of orthodoxy and rebellion is watching other people do it. It's not the same as watching the world burn down and laughing at it. That's not the thing. It's just people at an individual level they're responsible, but yet being irresponsible and reckless on command or when necessary. Right? It's that level of spontaneity that people are looking for. Right? The question is, unless you have a natural development, a growth, a birth, or whatever of those kind of qualities, you really cannot, you've not invested anything. People are not going to listen to you. If you do not have if you've not invested into building an audience, you've made no investment. It's kind of fruitless, And there are some times when I look at certain things and I think that's so superficial. That's crazy. I would never spend money on that. And yet there's a whole group of people willing to spend money on that. Right? I do find that absolutely fascinating. To give you an example, I am more into practicality and comfort when I buy products. So when I buy a shirt, I don't buy it for the brand. I only buy brands if I feel like the local brands available don't give me comfort. When I mean local, I mean poor quality brands don't give me comfort. That's the only time I buy branded stuff. And even that, I've noticed in my spending patterns, I don't buy branded brands too much, except in certain things. Maybe shoes. Shoes are the only thing I buy branded. And honestly, I have 3 pairs of shoes. I've bought them over the period of 5 to 6 years. Everything else that I have is not branded. Of course, I do have some other clothes that are branded, but I got them at offers, so at the same price as the poor quality brand. So the question is, do I go for a branded shirt that is comfortable and soft and everything beautiful, but at the same price as the poor quality brand? So what if it's rejected? It doesn't look terrible. It's still acceptable in society to wear those kind of dresses because nobody knows that was on offer. Yeah. So I think the question is, but sometimes I feel like people spend $2,000 to spend $500 to $100,000 on t-shirts and bags, and I wonder. Unless you're doing something very technical and niche. So, for example, you're a mountain climber and you're buying a backpack. It costs $700. I don't know if that's how much it costs, but that I can understand. Okay, you're a pro. You need the gear for what you're going to do. And you need the right ones. Go for it, right? But for recreational pleasure, to me it's superficial to buy a brand that looks good. Hey, Louis Vuitton looks good. But do I really have to spend $700 on the bag? See, I don't think so. I just don't. Because is it practical? That's the first question. Most of these bags, they're practical. Sometimes even the branded ones are not practical. Are they comfortable? Well, comfort is most bags are comfortable. Good quality or poor quality. Doesn't really matter. But there's a whole group of people chasing those kind of things, I think are superficial, Now, of course, you might be listening and saying that's not superficial. That's just their individual choice, whatever. But that's the thing, right? The question, I think, in the end of the day is the pursuit of consumerism. Is that mediocrity? The pursuit of consumerism. So I cannot buy these now. 10 years from now, I've built a business, I make money, I can buy those things then. So is the pursuit of consumerism mediocrity? If we can answer that question, then we know what. If you've correctly answered the question of, have we truly defined mediocrity? And is investment the only way to success? The only definition of success, basically, is investment the only definition of success? Thank you for listening.